Welcome to the CannaConversations blogcast, part video blog, part podcast, aimed to bridge the gap between the cannabis industry and the patients it serves. Join the ladies of Midwest Canna Concierge as they bring everyone to the table, from cultivation experts and dispensary staff to lawyers, doctors, and medical marijuana patients, to have open conversations around all things cannabis related.
Tiffany was the second interview, correct?
Yeah.
She was the one. Okay.
She is from Columbus.
Okay, she's from Columbus.
Yeah.
I think she was a great interview. I think she had a lot of great points in regards to, using the cannabis as medicine to reduce some of the pharmaceuticals that she was on.
Right.
And
the overall lifestyle changes that she made. Like, she talked about how because she was in a lot of pain and because she wasn't getting the care and the help that she needed, she turned to alcohol, and that caused all kinds of problems for her. And she even brought up that her mom was concerned about her stealing meds or
I heard that,
stealing things from working at a cultivator. And that, I kind of think, shines a light on the state of where she was back when she was in that phase of her life where she was drinking and depending on different pills and not getting the answers from her doctor, and before she started trying cannabis as medicine. And I think her mom's reaction and concern about that speaks a lot to where she was back then, which is not as healthy of a situation as she is in now, that she's in this place.
Yeah, absolutely. I also thought it was important, just in that conversation. It made me think about the importance of having a good relationship with your doctor. Yes. And making sure that you find somebody that connects with you and is wholeheartedly for your
well-being instead of their plan.
Exactly. And sometimes I don't want to bash on doctors, because clearly they have their purpose and everything, but I saw a meme one time that said it was the first day of school for physicians, and the instructor had a chalkboard that said, "One patient healed is one lost customer." And it feels as if sometimes
one patient healed is one lost customer.
Yeah, one patient cured. So an example, so if you come into the office, let's say you have seizures or some kind of condition that you go to the physician for on a regular, well, if they know that cannabis is something that heals people, or at least helps aid in their symptom relief,
why would they want them to have it?
Exactly. So I think a big thing in when she mentioned some stuff about doctors, and we've had this conversation in the past, and talking about how important it is to have a good relationship with your physician. Let's face it, many of us are going to have to continue to take some pharmaceuticals throughout our lives for whatever
I think there's
condition.
A place for that. Kelsey and I have had that conversation. Like, I think there's certainly a place for traditional medicine still. I'm not sure. Modern medicine has done miraculous things. I just think the amount of people that are left to this is the only option, or that they're forced to choose between modern medicine and using cannabis as medicine. And I don't think that's a very fair situation either.
Not at all. And it's just, I think also one of the great things that's come out of this push for legalization and this whole push for normalizing cannabis or reducing the stigma or whatever you'd like to call it, is that doctors are a little bit more open to the discussion versus how it used to be. Now, I know many people who have been straight up cut off of their medications if they've tested positive for cannabis in the past. And, those are things that are lessening as time goes on and more information is available.
Yeah. And I think that that's kind of, I guess, the goal of CannaConversations and just speaking to patients in general is getting more and more patients comfortable with sharing their story and their experience and their journey, because it's those people that are still really on the fence and not so sure about it, but they don't know enough or really put enough into digging into the research or like figuring this out for themselves. They need to hear firsthand without actually having to seek out that information.
Yes.
I mean, I guess in some sense they're going to have to seek out the show, but hopefully this information starts reaching more and more people so that it does start to shift that perception a little bit of, okay, well, maybe there is a smarter way to use this. Maybe it's not just this or this. But I think a big part of it is the greed, the legalization piece of it. That's a whole other conversation. We can have another day. But.
You know, another thing that kind of spoke to me in her the amount of time that it would take for those to take effect.
Mm-hmm.
For instance,
she works at a cultivation place.
She's a seasoned patient.
Well, she mentioned that she just started using his medicine in 2020, and she found the most relief from this specific brand's edible here in Ohio, and decided to apply. She said, I want to work for them. And so she does now. She works in their cultivation center awesome. And in the formulation center and working with edibles. So yeah, she's really hit all the science behind that.
One of the newer things that I've been hearing a lot about are the edibles that use the nanotechnology as the fast act. Yes, and she had mentioned something about that, so I thought that was very interesting too.
Yeah,
and there's so many advances in the cannabis world now that
I feel like it's daily.
No matter what, you'll have the opportunity to find something that works for you.
Right, for sure. Yeah, I thought it was interesting to hear her talk about, for sure, the difference in the rapidness of the edible piece of it, but then she went into a little bit about topicals and started talking about how she uses topicals and how it's helped her really target her menstrual pain, although that's not like a qualifying condition on the list. Like, I mean, it is chronic pain for sure, but I don't think a lot of recognition is put on. That's one of the main things I was so eager to try before our program was up and running, because I remember listening to a podcast years ago with Whoopi Goldberg about her putting out these patches. She was working with a company to formulate the pain patches, and I specifically for women with menstrual pain and things like that. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I never even thought of that. And that was like the one thing that, besides the program in general, when Ohio got medical marijuana approved, I was like, oh my God, we're finally going to have patches to be able to like just smack on there. And they're great for that really targeted crampy pain.
Yeah. Those things.
So it was fun to have her bring that up, because I don't know that I've ever had anybody else jump right to that for those patches. It's amazing.
Yeah, she was a really good interview. I think she had a lot of great things to share.
Yeah, and she's used cannabis in the past recreationally, and knew that it had worked for her for certain things. But with just coming into it during the pandemic as a medical patient, she didn't really have the opportunity to sit down and talk to a bud tender, because it was just like curbside pickup at that point. And so she really had to educate herself and rely a lot on the like Reddit boards and community, or like Facebook community groups and other patient feedback, because a lot of this information isn't readily available to patients. And so they depend on other patients to give this information. So she did a lot of her own research. So I thought that was kind of an interesting perspective right from the bat, to be able to speak to somebody brand new. And I don't know, I think she had some really interesting things to say. It was fun.
Yeah,
it was fun to
definitely. Definitely.
Yes, my name is Tiffany, and I am a medical cannabis patient. Something that I'm very passionate about. It's been extremely helpful for me. I kind of started my journey in the medical side in 2020. It was kind of crazy during COVID trying to get your medical card and not having any idea of how to like go about doing everything like that. So it's been quite the learning process on my own to try and figure out what works for me and what doesn't, because there was quite a while where you couldn't even go into a dispensary. It was all curbside stuff. So it's been kind of interesting.
So
process.
You were new to cannabis coming like during the pandemic is when you started really getting into it.
Right. Well,
as far as like a patient. Sure.
Yes, I did use recreationally before because I knew that it helped with my pain symptoms. I had back surgery in 2017, and was on a bunch of medication. I also have PTSD, so I was on like 3 or 4 different pills plus all the medicine they were giving me for my back, and I just felt really terrible all the time. And I was like, I know cannabis helps me, so I'm gonna like slowly wean myself off of my antidepressants, and which I did with the help of medical marijuana. I was taking 40 milligrams sativa capsules every day as I was weaning myself off my medication, and it changed my life. Like, I can't believe I never thought I'd be able to get off my antidepressants because I was on them for 7 years.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So it's been pretty cool.
What has been your most recognized change? Like, how much has changed for you? Because I know for myself, when I went off of my medications like that, I felt clearer. I felt like, as much as those pills say that they help get you there, like, they don't. It's more of a fog.
Yeah, I think pills, like especially in the antidepressant world, it should be more of like a short-term thing, as when you're working with your therapist and stuff too. And then I feel like then they should, as you're getting better, slowly decrease your doses. But my doctor wanted to just keep switching medications and trying this. Oh, well, no, I don't think we should do that. Let's try this instead. So it was just like, I didn't feel like I was in control of my own health, and I didn't feel like people were really listening to me about what I was feeling and how I was feeling. Currently, I'm trying to work on figuring out what's wrong with me chronic pain wise. They're kind of leaning towards fibromyalgia. So, but we'll see. I've been in and out of the doctor this year trying to figure it out.
That's such a hard journey in itself. That adds so much on top of the PTSD and depression that you're in, anxiety you're already dealing with. The process of getting doctors to believe you, like, I can't tell you how many tests I've had come back that say, oh, you're within normal ranges, or it's all normal, or it looks fine.
You're young and healthy.
Yeah, you're too young to feel this way. Or
but I feel like I'm an 80-year-old woman.
Yes, I totally get that. And it can be so defeating and so deflating to go through that entire process of trying to find the answers. So I sympathize for where you're at and trying to find it, but keep advocating for yourself. That's my biggest piece of advice, because nobody's going to push for answers more than you are.
Exactly.
And regardless of the test results coming back normal, you know that you don't feel right, like something's not right. And there's no shame in trying to get to the bottom of what that is.
Right.
So more power to you. I know we're not even halfway close to being done with your story, but I already want to just like cheer you on, because
thank you.
I know it's a battle. So
yeah, it really is. And the other thing too is like, not all doctors either know enough about the medical cannabis industry, or some of them just like shut you down immediately once you start talking about what you're using. And I'm like, well, recently they tried to put me on gabapentin and some other muscle relaxer, and I couldn't even work. Like, I could work, but everyone's like, are you okay? You seem like you're drunk. I don't drink. I'm a recovering alcoholic. So I quit drinking 5 years ago.
Sure.
And so anyway, so like, I don't want to feel like that,
Yeah.
So I started
and how messed up is it that legal for you to work like that, where you feel impaired, versus using this plant that allows you to operate like you should, or like you can.
Right.
It's just, it's,
like people, especially back, in the 50s or so, how with the reefer madness and all that stuff, like, so there's a whole generation of people who think it's like you're gonna feel crazy when you're on it. I'm like, no, like half the medicines they prescribe, opiates, for example, in Ohio are horrible.
Oh, absolutely.
Those make you feel 10 times worse and more messed up than cannabis has ever made me feel,
I 100% agree. I cannot agree more, because it is a world of difference from walking around in that fog that is generated by all of these pills,
right,
versus being so clear-headed and focused. And I think that, and I want to speak to how you came into this during the pandemic and weren't really exposed to or allowed or able to go in and ask the questions, and like, how do you get this information? And in Ohio specifically, the state's rules are so strict that the information that the dispensaries are allowed to provide is so tight-lipped, and so that's kind of what we're hoping to do it with Midwest Canna Concierge, is to be able to bridge that gap in kind of helping to educate the people that want to know how to correctly use it as medicine, and not just as, I want to get really high.
Right.
Being able to know the different components and the parts of it, and the difference in the method oh my goodness, my words are fumbling. In the consumption methods, and knowing how to use it as medicine properly and tracking it is a big hole that's out there right now that we're hoping to kind of patch up a little bit. And so it's interesting to hear from a patient coming in who has no idea. And so how do you pick your medications then? Like when you go into a dispensary, how do you pick?
Well, at first I just would, you look at their menu, try to Google information basically. Sure. And I'm like, well, that's not even accurate, because what they're growing in another state isn't necessarily going to be the same. I just started really like rabbit holing into the world of cannabis and learning about terpenes and all the other cannabinoids. Like for me, anything high in CBC, the cannabichromia, I think is called, helps with my nerve pain. So any neuropathic pain, and it's actually like a neurogenesis cannabinoid.
So it helps kind of boost
with your brain.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's
so
awesome.
And then if I use that with CBD and CBG and a little bit of THC, like I will feel really good. And I can just, I like edibles personally, like I think they work better for my pain. But I find when you combine it all together, it has that entourage effect, and like it's amazing. And like sometimes I can even go like a whole nother day without consuming anything, and it's still working, which you cannot say that about any kind of prescription medicine at all. So I think that's pretty amazing. It's like blows my mind that people aren't jumping on it more. And like people,
but I think it's because they have no idea. They just don't get it, or the biggest stigma and the stereotype especially about edibles is like, oh, well, like people don't know how much they're taking. And I'm not discounting that. That certainly is a huge risk. People need to be paying attention to how much of that edible they're taking. But I don't think there's enough spotlight put on the incredible benefits of edibles. Like myself, I use them for digestion. I've noticed that when I take an edible with a heavy meal, because I struggle with my appetite, I just don't have one. And when I do finally eat, I end up eating like a big greasy meal, and then I'm paying for it, and then I'm in pain. And so if I take an edible with that big greasy meal and it helps me eat it, I'm getting the calories I need, but I'm also able to digest like a normal person, thanks in part to this edible that's helping alleviate that inflammation in my gut. So it's great to hear your feedback on, and for somebody who makes edibles, like you understand how, like all the components of what goes into all that. Could you explain kind of what you know about like how edibles work?
Yeah. Maybe? So I feel like I have so much to say right now.
No, go for it. I'm very genuinely interested in knowing how this all works.
When I first started going, I'm going to jump back into the whole crazy COVID, trying to go to the dispensary and doing all that. When they finally started letting people in again, they would have, so different processors and cultivators will have little pop-ups at different dispensaries. So I just started talking to people and like trying to learn as much as possible about the products they're making and how they can help, and just what, for what I needed. And that's how I got my job as a processing technician now, because I work for the company that I got the most relief from. So it's, because I'm like, I really want to work for these people and help spread the love of the medication to other people.
I think that's great. I love that.
But as far as edibles go, so there's a couple different ways. So you have like your distillate gummies, which or cookies or whatever, which are going to take like about an hour to an hour and a half to activate, because it has to get digested through your stomach or absorbed through your stomach before you start to feel any effects. But there's also like a newer technology called nanotechnology or nano emulsion, where you're basically breaking down all the THC and other cannabinoids into tiny molecules so that they're water soluble. And so then you can take that and put that in with like whatever edible, and that's more fast acting. So it can start in around 20 to 45 minutes instead of having to wait. So if you need like instant relief, it's nice to have something like that. Sure. A lot of the beverages are made like that are out there. So
I haven't tried any of those. I'm very intrigued by those little have you seen, they look like those little Mio squirt things. I'm like super intrigued by that, but I'm also like, I know that could go one of two ways. I don't know if I trust myself.
That stuff is not the greatest tasting, I'll say. And I've tried these things and I was like not super impressed with it. But there's a company, Wellspring Fields, they make a ginger ale and it's like the greatest thing ever. And as someone who doesn't drink alcohol too, it's perfect to take to a party or a gathering.
With
I don't have that like anxiety about not drinking,
Sure.
So it's kind of nice to have that. But yeah, I think it's pretty cool. Like that you can either be like, all right, I'm going to take this in the morning because I know after I hit my pen and get going, then I know in about an hour and a half, I'll still have my relief, even though I can't actually be actively, vaping or, whatever. So there's that. I like to use patches too. Those are very helpful for like when my back really, like when I get real flared up. So those are helpful with that. I'm totally losing my train of thought.
That's okay. I've had an amazing experience with patches as well. I recommend them to everybody because for those really targeted areas, or even the lotion or the salves that are out. Oh man, for those targeted spots, it's incredible.
Yes, definitely the best for menstrual cramps too.
Absolutely.
Like something that I struggle with, and since I was younger, like just kind of being a recreational user, I always told my doctor like the only thing that helps take my cramps away is marijuana. Like literally that's the only thing that helps. It's crazy to me that I could, they've tried to totally all these different pills, birth controls, things like that. I think that made me even crazier. Oh my gosh. I don't want to mean to get like super personal on myself, but I honestly went through so many different pills. They ended up diagnosing me with endometriosis and PCOS. And both, I've tried pills, I had the implant in my arm, and it just made me a miserable person. It just, no relief it's not even like there was relief. I wasn't even getting any relief. It was supposedly regulating the cycle, and I could not do it. I ended up having to switch OBs because he refused to treat me because I wouldn't get back on a birth control. And so I switched OBs, and she was all about me using medical marijuana and being fine with it. But it's insane to me the amount of doctors who have no clue or like completely just write it off. But they're also not taught that. They don't know anything about it. So I guess my doctor for my back, I just started going to a new orthopedic place. So she was like, doesn't know anything about medical cannabis, but so I've been trying to like educate her a little bit here and there, and she's like, well, when you're not using, doesn't it make you feel crazy or have anxiety? I'm like, no. I'm like, not at all. Like I'm totally fine. I mean, pain wise, I'm not fine if I don't have it, but like
but you're not like instantly like, I have to have this, or like,
no,
it's not like a withdrawal thing. I mean,
no.
eventually there is, to some degree, people can have withdrawals. I'm not going to write that off, but especially for people with chronic pain, it's more of a balancer. You can manage, you can deal with those pain spikes. People that have lived in chronic pain can deal with those points, knowing that they're going to be able to get relief for themselves. It's those people that and I don't want to say this as a blanket statement for everybody, but in my case, at least with the pills, it was more like, if I miss it, I'm playing drastic catch up. Like, if I'm not on this constant cycle, then I'm playing this 3-day catch up to try to get back to that okay state. And that wasn't okay. Like, I don't ever want to be that way again. So I can totally relate. And
I feel like that's part, like, early on and trying to like deal with my pain and mental health and everything, like, and they just shove pills at you. And then I think that's why I got so into drinking so much all the time, just to numb everything, because I was like, I like feel terrible and I feel like no one's listening to me, so I'm just gonna do this because it seems like that's what everybody else is doing, living in a college town. That's kind of like
which is not great for somebody who then has to, like, your hangover lasts like a week and a half versus a person who could rebound in a day. So I've been there. That's also kind of what I turned into this ugly drunk that was vicious and mean. And then I didn't recognize myself. And mostly it was because I knew that I was in pain and I was just neglecting it. And so I made the decision to stop drinking and to only use cannabis. And I've been a much happier person. I can say that. I know. And it blows my mind that this is still not something that is just accessible to everybody.
Yeah. It's been an interesting journey. Like, when I took my job, I was in February, I think, that I started. March is actually when I started, but at the processing facility I work at. And like, when I told my family and friends, and I go to church on Sundays, so like I told them, like, and they're like, what? And so at first it was really awkward, but then and it's probably mostly me, because you're not used to talking about it openly in front of people. But then I just started to be like, well, yeah, I use it for this or that, insomnia. Like, I have horrible insomnia. And
but that's what it takes, is breaking that barrier and starting to have the conversations to normalize it, because people don't talk about it. And then that develops a shame and a guilt, and it shouldn't have to be that way.
Right, exactly. So it's been kind of cool to like see how, like, talk to people about it around me that maybe had this whole different stigma about it. And then now being like, well, if it goes rec, I think I might try it out. And I'm like, oh, that's fantastic. Like, my grandma is going to get her card now because I've been trying to explain to her how helpful it can be.
I've been working on mine. She's on the CBD kick. I've got her on CBD, but she's not so much on the card kick yet. But so now that you're all educated on it, I shouldn't say all, it's every day. We're always learning something new. But now that you have that education piece to it, you're able to then help your grandma so that she's not facing those same battles. Those aren't hurdles that she has to jump over anymore, because you're going to be able to do it for her or help her with it. That's awesome. Exactly.
I told her I'd be a caregiver for her, so I can
go. There you go. Even better. You can grab it at the same time.
Exactly.
Awesome. So then I was going to say, one of my questions was if anybody in your inner circle kind of struggled with this path for you. Like, is that something that you had to battle? Like, I know that neither of my parents were great fans of me doing this, but now that I am as passionate about it, and they do see the relief that I've gotten, it's certainly changed their perception quite a bit. Now they're both coming into retirement, and they're both ready to kind of explore this world with me. So I'm just curious if you have anybody in your circle. You just said your grandma's kind of open to it now.
Right. Yeah, my parents at first were a little like, what are you going to be doing? My dad laughed at me, and he was like, are you sure that's a good idea? My mom was like, aren't you afraid you're gonna steal something? I'm like, really? Like, have I ever been someone who steals?
What?
And then she's like, well, when you used to bartend, you used to drink all the time. And I'm like, okay, but it's totally not the same thing,
Right.
Mom. Like
Also, if they have any idea of how tightly tracked everything is
right?
in the Ohio system, you don't steal anything ever.
No, we can't even try what we make. I have to go to the dispensary and buy it. And then be like, oh, wait, we need to adjust this flavor. You know, like it's insane that we have to do that. Like, I hope they change that eventually. Anyway.
That's a whole or dispensary staffs. It kills me that dispensary staffs, there's no discount. Not only there's no tips, there's no discount, there's no samples, there's no promotions, there's nothing. Like, you can't do anything.
Give out unmedicated samples. Like, like a no. Like, it's insane. So,
which blows my mind, because doctors are just giving pill samples away, like, all the time.
Right. It doesn't make sense either.
And swag that has their pill name on it, and they're
we're not allowed to do that. Like, we just picked up a white label account at my facility, and they brought all this really awesome swag, like bandanas and hats and lanyards and fanny packs, and it's like, can't really do much with it technically. Like, you know,
I mean, like, the employees can have that stuff, like, at the processor though, like, you guys could have that, right?
Right, but like,
they just can't wear it out to patient facing anything.
Right. Well, technically, and you're not allowed to pass it out to dispensary employees either. You can get in trouble for that.
No, but that's what I mean is if that vendor, whoever took it to the processor directly, couldn't the processing staff have it?
Yeah, okay. We can.
I was gonna say, at least you guys can get access to it. It's just, but yeah, it's the same thing. And like, vendors, like, your processor couldn't go into a dispensary with swag and promote it or have any of that.
So that's been kind of interesting, and like, you know, going, not to talk too much about like the career side of things, but like, you know, even the laws on the packaging, like, it can't have a pot leaf on it, you know, or they have to rewrite it. You know, if you're missing one little word or something somewhere, it's like, like, no, denied. So it's kind of crazy.
One thing I'm hoping to see happen in the labeling piece of it, and some places are doing it, at least some growers are doing it, but I want to see all of the cannabinoids and terpenes in everything. Like, I want that information, whether it's in a barcode that I scan and it actually takes me to that testing result, right? Instead of just some random website. Like, yes. And I want that. I want patients to have access to that, because how else are we telling them that this is medicine, but we're just sending them out to try it? And it may or may not, if it works, it may or may not be available for them when they come back. Like, I want patients to be able to know what about that product is causing that relief for you, and where else can you get it if that's not available.
Right.
I think people need to know those pieces.
Yeah, I think people are starting to do that more on the labeling, but that's like a thing. So when I first got into the medical cannabis, you know, it was a lot of trial and error. I went through my days real fast at first, trying to figure out what worked and what didn't, because I always was more of a sativa girl, especially daytime. It just helps clear. Sativas are more high in the CBC, I found out, so that's probably why. But there's certain terpenes that I don't like that will make me feel like my heart races, you know. So it works for, you know, so what works for one person doesn't work for another sometimes.
Absolutely.
So I feel like, you know, it was really difficult at first before people started putting anything, you know, really on their packaging, because I'm like, wow, how do I know what's in this? Or you have to like hunt down on their website, or there's barcodes that don't work, whatever. So,
or just Googling and looking through chat rooms and Reddit boards and I love that other patients are putting that information out there, but that should not be how it has to be. In my opinion, when I worked at the dispensary, we made every effort to get at least the terpene information from the cultivators, especially for flower, because that's how we dictated like what medicinal purpose that was. Like if you're looking to sleep, we want one high and linalool. If you're looking for something that's going to help you focus, we want pinene. Like these are things that people need to know, and it's just not readily available unless you're really, oh, hi puppy dog.
Back up. I have two. So. Yeah. Hey, get out of here. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. I love it. That was so funny.
Well,
she's just gonna stare at you like, what the heck, Mom? That's so cute. So yeah, we've talked a lot about your when you were first getting in. So looking back, what is a piece of advice that you would give people starting out now, like for somebody brand new coming in?
I think one, don't be afraid to ask questions and say like you have no idea what you're doing, because I think that was a big problem for me. I was afraid. I didn't know what I was allowed to say and not say, the old days of going into water beds and stuff and buying a pipe or something. You're like, what am I allowed to say? I don't know.
Yeah.
So there was that. And like, especially my first doctor visit, like at first I was like, nope, never used it before. Cause I was like, maybe they're not going to give it to me if I've used it before. Like there wasn't easy.
There's not a guide. Yeah. Like nobody's guiding you through what to say.
Don't like be honest about what you're going through, and don't be afraid to ask questions and reach out to like other patients or just the bud tenders at the dispensaries. A lot of them are very knowledgeable in what's happening, what's going on. But I think sometimes you get, when you're working, you get busy, you're trying to just go through people. So don't be afraid though to like, stand up for yourself and be like, hey,
don't be afraid to make them take their time and explaining things out to you. Honestly, as somebody who worked in the dispensary, I loved when patients did that. I loved when they had questions, because it's not what I'm not trying to send you off to just good luck. Like, I want to be able to help. I want to be able to get you what you're looking for. So please do bring up all your questions. I tell people, go in with a list. Like, think about all the things you don't know. If you don't, especially to patients that don't want or can't spend the time researching and looking into all of this, sit down with your bud tender and just say, hey, can you tell me what's good about each, like what's good? Like, what should I be looking for? This is what I want. This is what I'm looking to do, and go from there.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that. And when you are getting into the edible game early on, low and slow is definitely the best way to go, because
I think that's a good rule for all forms.
Start
low, go slow.
All forms
for sure.
I definitely have had a time where I was like, oh, I'm gonna try this and this all at once, and then 2 hours later I'm like, I can't move, that was a horrible idea. Like,
I know.
So, take it easy, or make sure you don't have to be somewhere or do something, because edibles hit different. It's not the same as vaping, or even the topicals don't really cross that threshold,
that barrier. But it's an experiment. I think that people don't they don't know. I shouldn't say it like everybody's so naive, but this is a new thing for so many people, and even people who have been smoking cannabis for years, coming into edibles or coming into medical grade cannabis or any of that. Everything is so different now. Like, it's not the same from 30 years ago or even 20 years ago. And I think that that's kind of something that, and there's all kinds of tracking apps and journaling apps and stuff out there now, which are great. I'm terrible at remembering it. I myself have a chalkboard in here in my room that I will just, if I'm trying something new, I just like jot down the time and like what I'm taking and how much, just so that I can like, then the next day or whenever I come back, I like look at it. I'm like, okay, so this is the time I took it. This is when I'm coming back out. Like, what am I looking for? How did it do? And just kind of even just having that awareness of how things are hitting you and what you can accomplish within that period of time. Always try new things from home when you don't have anything to do before you try it to do what you're trying to do, just so you know. But keeping track of it is always
I was going to say that. That's such a big, another good piece of advice, because, you know, I have a little like notepad app on my phone. So I just jot down.
Where I do mine sometimes too.
Yeah. Like what I like the different strains, or like what cannabinoids or terpenes were in there. And then that's how I figured out what worked for me and what didn't. Is just keeping track. So
yep. That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, actually, I should, do we ask, did I talk about how you make your purchases now? Yeah, we did. You kind of explained that, like what you look for. And
yeah, I just look for specific terpenes and cannabinoids that suit me best. You know, or I'm like, oh, that sounds like a fun strain of flower. Let's see what that's all about.
Right.
You know? So
that's, flower is my my go-to. I use my dryer vaporizer, and I just love the flavor profiles of different flowers. But I do love a good edible. Especially one that's going to help me digest food and eat like a person. Yeah. Yep. I like mainly like sativa vapes, or a sativa dominant hybrid in the morning, and then maybe a couple gummies or half a gummy, depending on the milligram, you know, throughout the day if needed. And then at night, I'm more of like indica flower, because it'll knock me out. Like, so and that's what I need. I love it.
So
I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me.
You're welcome. It was nice to meet you.
Yes, you as well.
I'm excited about what you're doing. That's great. I checked out the website and everything, and it's really cool. So
thank you. We're excited. It's something that the three of us, Kelsey, Amanda, and I, have been very passionate about. We've all experienced it from different perspectives, and my passion is talking to people one-on-one and getting to hear their stories firsthand. It's literally my juice. This is what gets me going. This is what I love to hear, and seeing the difference, even just from how you were explaining your struggle with all the pills and the medications before, to the relief you feel now, and the ability you've had to regain, taking your life back and regaining that quality of life. It's amazing.
Yeah, I wasn't even able to, before I started using medical cannabis, I wasn't even able to do, I could only do very basic minimal yoga without pain. And then last year, a few months into the program, I started roller skating again, which is one of my favorite things that I've like to do. But since my back surgery, I also had my appendix out the year after my back surgery. So it was extra, I think something ignited in my body, and now I'm overstimulated all the time. But so I was really worried about trying to be too active, and then I started to feel better, and I'm like, all right, I can skate again. This is great. So
that's amazing.
To get your life back. I feel like I have my life back, It's amazing.
I love it. Oh my gosh, I love that. I've always so do you do roller derby and anything like that?
No, I don't roller derby.
That gets crazy competitive. People get crazy.
No, I'm not. I don't think they've been doing it with all the COVID stuff too.
I bet.
I found a group of girls locally that we'll go on trail skates, or we go to skate parks, but I'm I probably don't need to be doing too much of that stuff, but it's still fun. Just going down a little ramp, you're that's amazing, I just did that and I was so scared. So it's empowering, but
and to be able to have that group of friends is just pretty awesome.
It's been really cool to be 38 years old and making new friends.
But who says, you're never too old to make new friends.
Thanks so much for listening to this Canna Conversation. To learn more, please follow us on Instagram at Midwest_CannaConcierge. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen, so other Canna curious folk can find us. We really appreciate your support.